Thank you so much for everyone for tuning in and joining us. I'm so excited about this panel because it gives me an opportunity to reconnect with some people that I don't always get to see face to face, and I guess we're kind of face to face right now in the computer screen world. But what I have put together is a panel of 4 people, myself included, who have done some virtual choir, larger virtual choir things. And welcome, Melody. Virtual choir things who have different perspectives of different levels of exploration and creation. And so I'm going to get the ball rolling. We're going to have about 5 minutes to introduce ourselves, tell you all each about some of the cool things that we've done with virtual choirs, and then I have some pointed questions, and then we'll try to give you a pearl of wisdom. Finally, there will be an opportunity for Q&A. Please use the Q&A function. So if you are on a computer, just mouse over the screen and you can push the Q&A button, and you can ask questions on the Q&A throughout the whole thing. One of us might type an answer for you. And yeah, we'll save the chat more for something other things. So if you have like a cool comment, go ahead, put it in the chat. But I only have 1 more minute for my time. You've probably sick of seeing me this week. So one of the cool things that I love doing with virtual choirs is to create rounds. And one of the projects that I've done that I haven't shared is I actually have my students, when we're doing our warm-ups, to take out their devices, their phones, and we'll sing, hey ho, nobody ho, meat no drink no, and we'll sing, and then I'll have them all send it, and then we can play around with those to create a massive round through using digital audio workstations and video editing software. So I'm going to let Melody still have a little bit of time to like catch her breath and everything. So we've changed the order. Matt's gonna tell us a little bit about some of the things he's done.
Thank you, Chris. My name is Matt Clauhs. I'm an assistant professor of music education at Ithaca College. And I suppose I first got into virtual choirs just a few months ago when our campus moved to remote instruction. I had a music production class that was about 12 music education students that were going to learn about sound recording and music production, composing, things like that. And my colleague and next door neighbor, actually, Janet Galvan, had a choir. She was interested in how they might be able to continue to perform and collaborate and produce something like a virtual choir during this time. So we talked about it, and we thought it would be mutually beneficial to both of our students, my music ed students who were in a music technology-based class, and then her choir students, to continue to perform and make music together as a community if we collaborated on a project. So in a matter of days, we put together this plan and this timeline and acquired the technology necessary, which wasn't much. It was really just a free subscription to Soundtrap, and we set it in motion. So basically the short of it is that her students would record all of their individual parts in Soundtrap, which is like an online digital audio workstation, so they could see all the other people who had recorded. Some of them even did a little mixing and editing themselves, and they recorded that into 4 different groups: sopranos, altos, tenors, and basses. So they heard everyone in their section, but no one in another section. And then I divided my students into groups: a soprano group, alto, tenor, and bass group of recording engineers. And they were tasked with blending everything together, mixing it, identifying if there were any things that needed to be redone. And both myself and Dr. Galvan would listen to the recordings and ask some individuals to redo certain parts until we were satisfied with the product. And then, yeah, we spent about 7 weeks putting those recordings together. We actually did a world premiere of Michael Busowitz-Quarm's The World, This Wall, and Me, which was a 7.5-minute amazing composition, but pretty monumental work for a first try at creating a virtual choir. But it was an incredible experience, and I feel like the way we approached it was very collaborative. So even the students in the choir selected that song for the performance. So they essentially chose the repertoire, practiced it, learned it on their own, recorded it, obviously with some direction and guidance from Dr. Galvan, and then my students collaborated to put it all together. So this is, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, but what one of the model that Chris calls "do it with others," where you're collaborating together to create a product rather than everyone send me the recordings, you know, and I'll stay up all night putting it together. So I feel like the music ed students really understood a lot more about sound recording and music production than they would have if we hadn't done this kind of project, because there's so much editing involved with it, and so much, and they wanted it to be great, right? You know, it was a world premiere of a piece. They knew it was going to be very public. I mean, when it launched on its premiere date, there were thousands of views within a few hours. So I feel like we knew the stakes were pretty high, and they really stepped up to the occasion. And yeah, I'm just proud of my students and the collaboration and the spirit of continuing to make music together as a community during this challenging time.
So we still have 2 minutes with Matt's. So will you tell us how you got everyone? You started with the accompaniment track, right? And that's how they started to add their parts?
Yep. Actually, Michael recorded each part to, she must have used a click track or something, because all of them were synchronized perfectly. But she recorded a soprano part, an alto, a tenor, and a bass part. Playing some of the other parts on the piano was an a cappella piece, so there was really no piano accompaniment. But she would sing the melodies, and that was the guide, the reference track for students to learn the piece. But then also they recorded along with it. So then once all of the students had contributed their individual tracks, we removed Michael's reference track, and we were left with all of the vocalists.
Thank you. Jeremy had a question saying separating audio and video extra takes time. Is it worth the effort? It's really funny because Matt's group recorded the audio, then sent it back, and each person uploaded their own video. David, in his individual videos, he records vocals and visuals at the same time. Melody always created an audio track, then lip synced it. So there's so many different, not always, but towards the end or the later years. So it's very, depends on your philosophy, desire, and skill set. All right. David, why don't you take us away and tell us a little bit about what you do?
All right. My name's David Wesley Francois. I go out by David Wesley on YouTube. I actually uploaded my first YouTube video 10 years ago this July, so it's been a while. But I actually started getting into multi-track videos towards the end of 2012. I didn't have any formal education post-secondary in music, except for one course that I took in the psychology of music, which was interesting, part of a psychology minor I did. So my main I guess, formative experiences in music were A, in a marching band, and B, serving on a contemporary worship team in a church. So I actually approached the virtual choir genre from a completely different direction. I'm not coming from an ensemble that's looking to continue their work and just translating into the virtual world. I started my first virtual choir actually in 2016 because I received numerous requests from people that enjoyed my work on YouTube. They wanted to collaborate, and there were some people that had a body of work on their own that I could evaluate and say, yeah, maybe this could work. But generally, it was people that really didn't have much of an online portfolio, and probably didn't have the expertise or the equipment to really collaborate on the level, on a peer-to-peer kind of level. So having no idea what the response would be, and really just kind of figure it out on my own. In 2016, I started a virtual choir. I recorded instrumental accompaniment tracks myself, vocal tracks myself, and basically just put it out there for people to join. And I don't have the stats in front of me for that one, but I had a few dozen people from, I think, 11 countries in total. And then I did one more per year. And I'm actually in the middle of a project right now. So the most popular one I did was an arrangement I did of In Christ Alone by Stuart Townend and Keith Getty. And that had 48 singers doing 60 parts. It's an a cappella arrangement. And it's been watched somewhere between 2 and 3 million times, but things really, really blew up with COVID because of the natural interest in the choirs. And there really weren't that many virtual choirs on YouTube prior to March of 2020. So it's really been interesting for me to, well, kind of feel like a little bit of a hipster in that, like, oh, I was doing this before COVID. But it is really nice to see that people are able to continue on with their groups. The one thing that I think I specialized in, starting with my second virtual choir, I did an arrangement of O Canada for Canada's 150th birthday in 2017, was that I built a website for receiving submissions, so I didn't have to worry about shared folders or anything like that. And most recently, I kind of delayed starting this project so I could revamp my website and have a system that would allow me to provide feedback directly. No more emails back and forth. People could keep a record of their feedback. I have canned comments of common errors that people have when submitting virtual choir things, and they can see whether their submission's been accepted, rejected, still under review, or just received. So that's been interesting for me, kind of combining computer programming and building a totally closed system, doing the arranging, doing the audio and video editing. It kind of stretches me a bit. I'm a little impressed by some of the stuff that's come out recently, but yeah, it's a whole new art form, and I'm sure it'll keep going after all of this.
Thanks, David. Let's go ahead and have Melody share a little bit of what she's done on the virtual choir front. You're still muted.
Unmute. Okay. Can you hear me now? Yay. Okay. First, I apologize. Things have been really crazy. I look like this. I just got off of work and I have been working 12-hour shifts with COVID patients. So once again, I apologize. I may look a little bit not like my normal self. But anyway, let's get on to the virtual choir. So back in 2009, wow, that's a long time ago, I was looking for scholarships for choir and whatnot, and I saw that Eric Whitaker was, doing this virtual choir thing, and I didn't want to do it. And I told my mom, I said, I'm just not good enough. And my mom kind of made me do it. I give the credit to her. So I auditioned and I made the solo, and things kind of just went from there. I've been in almost every virtual choir except for the 5th one, I believe. No, that was Fly to Paradise. But I just sang a lot in high school, and I was really intrigued by the way that music was done online. Like Julian Neal, he's one of the first multi-trackers out there, and I got in contact with him and I said, I would love to multi-track. What do you use? And I just kind of did it myself. I downloaded the software. I bought the Mac and the Windows 7. That's what I use right now with Pro Tools on my Mac. And I just record, and sometimes if I'm in a rush, I kind of sing and do the video at the same time. And that's how I layer bit by bit. I think Matthew said one of the things he did was like he layered soprano, alto, tenor, bass. That's what I did as well. And I just went from the melody and then went straight down until I got everything right. Most of the times I did everything very dry, or maybe I added a little bit of reverb here and there because I didn't know much about it. I've never been educated as far as recording engineering goes. I just think it's fun, and I love to listen to other people do it, and I get on YouTube and I find it fascinating. The last piece that I did, I think it was a few months ago. I know I did a recent recording of Danny Boy, Celtic Woman, and that's, as far as multi-tracking goes, that's what I've done lately. I haven't had time since I've been working a lot. As far as performing, still I perform with the Nashville Opera here, the chorus, as just a soprano. It's been a lot of fun. I was going to be in Verdi's Rigoletto here this year, but they canceled because of COVID, so that didn't happen. But hopefully once it starts to open back up, I'll be involved again. And then on the side, I worked for Music City Princesses. I like Elsa, Ariel. I do a lot of princesses, you know, and I love the kids, so that's a lot of fun. And right now I'm just anxiously awaiting for Virtual Choir 6 to release. So
Yeah, Eric Whitaker's Virtual Choir 6 is coming out in about a month from yesterday. So stay tuned to see that. Melody, before we move on to the next thing, would you talk a little bit about the differences between like being part of a group like that and then doing your own virtual choirs by yourself?
yes, so I know that when I am with a group of people, I try to tone down the vibrato and be a little bit more soft, and try to make sure that, you know, I hear people next to me, because I know if I'm too loud, I might stand out. I know I had an issue when I was like in high school. I sang really loud because I just have a naturally loud voice. And so I just kind of try to blend. And then when I do one or two songs, like when I do a virtual choir online, I think one of my favorite ones was Seal Lullaby by Eric Whitaker, and that was an SSAA choir, and that was just one of the most beautiful pieces I think I've ever sang. And I just did very ethereal, soft sounds, and I distinctly remember singing with a lot of consonants, like the first two or three, like 2 takes, and then the rest I would just do a lot of vowels. I wouldn't put consonants in it because I didn't want a whole lot of TTT, and you know, just it didn't sound right. So that's one of the things that I've realized that I like a whole lot to do for that.
Thanks, Melody. So it sounds like it also allowed you to play around with the timbres and the vocal quality and vocal tones that you had. That's really exciting. So we're gonna stick with you. What ways did your schooling help prepare you to create YouTube videos and participate in virtual choirs online?
So I realized when I first started doing a lot of multi-tracking, I couldn't read music as well, especially with the bass parts, because I'm not very familiar with bass. But even though I have a bachelor's in music, I don't consider myself a piano player. I was more in vocal performance. I just passed my proficiency test in piano. That's all I wanted to do. But that helped me read music and learn the music better in order to get the parts down that I needed to in the tenor and bass part.
Awesome. Any other ways that like being in choir in schools helped you out? Because these we've got a bunch of choir directors here. What can they do to help someone like you be ready to do stuff online?
Well, I think it's just a lot of practicing. And I know that even as a talented performer and, you know, a good parrot, make sure that, you know, practice makes perfect. Like I still have to practice. And I know one of the best choir directors that I had, he was very, very tough, but he would literally point at us one at a time and say, okay, we've been singing this piece for 2 to 3 weeks now. You should know this part. Like, you know, 3 weeks into learning this music, you should know this part. And we would have like sectionals, and he would call us out one by one. It probably wasn't the best method, but it made us really good. And he would place stronger people. So like I would be on an end or around people that didn't know the music very well, so they could listen to me, because I sang a lot of alto 1 and alto 2, even though I'm a soprano, but I could read music. And it was just easier for people around me to learn who weren't as musically inclined. And they couldn't read music. But I think singling out people is one of the best things, even though students may not, they probably would be terrified for it to, but that's what made us the best. You know, we went to heritage festivals and things like that, and we always came out on top because that's what he did to us.
It's really interesting you say that, because one of the things that I found when I have my students do virtual choirs is because they have to record their part, they listen to it over and over and over again. They sing it over and over again, and they get extra practice trying to get something
Mhm.
recorded until they're happy with it. So thank you
Right.
for that, Melody. It's kind of that's something that I always found interesting, that it was like a connection to that you, but then the
Yeah.
director gets to hear it when you submit the videos or the audio. So thanks, Melody. David, would you talk to us a little bit about how you've used YouTube to prepare, or how you've helped your singers prepare for your collective choirs?
Sure. So it's been a bit of an evolution. I'm like, the project I'm working on is actually my 6th one. So when you say virtual choir 6 is coming in a month, I'm like, yeah, mine is too. So with the first one, basically, it was my own arrangement. So I put up sheet music on a webpage, everything that's just linked. There was also guide tracks. So because this had an accompaniment, there would be the instrumental accompaniment as well as a guide voice and a metronome. And in addition to that, there would be some MIDI cue notes. So if especially for the parts that weren't doing the melody, it would count them in at the pitch that they're going to be coming in on, just so that people that weren't very good sight readers or could get kind of tonally lost, they could come into those phrases nice and strong. This became even more important in my 3rd virtual choir, which was in Christ Alone, because it was all a cappella, and you really needed people, because the melody was passed around to basically every part. There were 6 vocal parts, 3 men, 3 women. It was really important, and there was a half-step key changed right before the last verse as well. So it was really important for people to have a good cue. So for the a cappella ones that I've done, basically the part they're singing is kind of highlighted, but the other ones are in the background for some context. Starting with In Christ Alone, I also created accompaniment videos. So basically I use Sibelius. I've been using Sibelius since like 2002. And I export a panorama of each part. And basically I use Adobe Premiere, and I animate it across the screen, kind of karaoke style. So people can see the notes that are coming. And they can basically put up a tablet on a music stand just below their camera, so they can watch the music go by as it's actually happening. People have found that very useful, and even if you don't have an extra device to use that while you're recording, it is an excellent learning tool, especially for people that don't read music. Mm-hmm. For my 4th virtual choir, I did something a little different in that I had just piano chords and the reference voice that they're singing, so they didn't know what the other voices were doing. And this was more of it was a modern arrangement of A Mighty Fortress Is Our God, and because there was instrumental background, like the kind of blend and stuff like that within a section isn't super important. It's more of a pop kind of thing. So they didn't actually hear the final accompaniment, and they didn't hear the other parts. It was actually interesting because there was one participant in particular who wasn't successful for In Christ Alone, the a cappella part, the a cappella arrangement, but he was successful for Mighty Fortress with the instruments. And he didn't get back to me with my question, but I wondered if his brain just wasn't able to kind of filter out the other parts that were going on in the background, because he was able to completely nail Mighty Fortress when it was just the guide voice and the piano chords. So yeah, so I've continued to do that with the the sheet music, the guide tracks with the extra cues, and the guide videos. And this time actually I got somebody to be an American Sign Language guide as well. So I created a resource for him to practice with his timing, and created a video for synchronizing people doing sign language as well.
David, we're gonna have to move on. Thank you for the ideas. If you have any questions to David to expand on any of that, go ahead and throw that into Q&A. He might be able to answer it. Matt, how do you approach teaching tech skills in college, and how can teachers prepare to teach these skills to their students?
Yeah, so my approach to teaching technology has changed quite a bit. When I first started teaching technology, we would have a textbook, and I would start each class by demonstrating some principles. We would practice them, and then they'd apply them to a short exercise. But all the exercises, all the activities were disconnected. So maybe one day they were preparing 30 seconds of a film score. The next day they were recording a beatbox composition or something, and they weren't related to one another. They were building skills, but I could tell students the buy-in wasn't as great. And then the second half of the year, I said, you know what, we've learned all these skills, let's write an album together. So students then just basically, it was an open workshop where they would come in every day into the lab, and they would just be composing. I would circle around the room, listen to projects. We would do gallery walks where students would just rotate around stations and leave comments. And the students would ask me, why didn't we do this all year? I mean, this is you know what excites us, is doing something that's original, that's creative, that is meaningful to us. So I feel like I've shifted from let's follow, you know, the pages and activities of a textbook to, you know, what is most interesting and relevant to you, and how can we leverage your interests in order to learn this technology? Because the point isn't to learn the technology, the point is to create something with it. So most of my projects in music technology have been pretty large scale things, like creating a class album, you know, making music videos. Certainly the virtual ensembles were a pretty big project. And I feel like the students really come together when there's that common shared goal. We're all doing one thing together and we can collaborate. So I feel like learning what students are interested in, and then making sure that the assignments are broad enough that it'll cater to their interests. So yeah, just for example, right now I'm preparing a few classes. I'm teaching in the summer, teaching music with online digital audio workstations. So the assignments are very open-ended about creating duets or podcasts, or again, writing original material. We're using the technology in order to meet that goal that the student has, but the goals come from the students and not the teacher in these cases. There's a lot of great scholarship on teaching creativity and compositions, and I feel like focusing on the creative aspect of the music making, and then using the technology to help us reach those goals has been really influential in my curriculum development. And I think a lot of the virtual ensemble, especially the single person, do it yourself, multi-selfing, one person doing 9 frames or et cetera. Those all came from a place of a student wanting to sing all the duets from Disney songs, or wanting to recreate something themselves. It probably wasn't directed to them. So yeah, most of my technology is a bit more collaborative, democratic, learner-centered, I suppose, in the way that the students really have a lot of input on, you know, what the ultimate product will be.
Thanks, Matt. So it definitely shows the idea of focusing on what you can create with technology rather than just teaching people technology. Thank you. Speaking of loving to sing your favorite Disney songs, Mel, would you talk to us a little bit about, as you create one-person choirs, how do you go about learning, recording, and editing your stuff? And you have a whole 4 minutes to try to go through that whole process.
Okay. I love this. This is so awesome. Okay, so I go over there to my piano and I learn the music as well as I can. And then I get out, I use a MacBook Pro, and I have a Rode microphone. I received that from my producer in Germany, Frank Peterson. He worked with Sarah Brightman in the past. That's the way that I did my recordings then. So I learned a little bit from there. And so I do all that. Once I get the audio down, I use Pro Tools. I think I downloaded the new software because I was a student, so I got half off. which was great. If you have students, Pro Tools, I don't know if they still do the deals, but I got it for like half off. It's really cool. And so I did that. And once I get it the way that I want to sound, then I take that audio, I edit it, you know, I cut out the breaths, I, you know, cut out whatever I want, minimize things, noise, white noise and stuff. I have a bird, by the way. I'm sorry if you hear her. She's going off and I have to move her as well because I need it silent. So then I head over to my desktop, which is, I think I mentioned it was Windows 7, because I use Sony Vegas Pro 12. So I take the music from the MacBook, I put it on like a little disk drive, and then I transfer it over to, it's probably too much work, but this is how I've always done it. And I transfer it to my Windows 7, and then I download that. And then now what I have right here that's holding this up is a, what do they call it? Like a ring light or something that's $90 off of Amazon. I set that up and then I just record. I have a little Canon camera that I record on, and then I do part by part by part, have bloopers in some of my videos, and I try to put them in the end if I have time or if I feel like it. And then I take all of that and then I upload that into with the audio and I sync it up. So I line up, because I sing along with it during my video to the audio, and then I line it up, cut it off, fade, you know. And I also just bought a green screen. I just started green screening stuff a couple of years back, and that's hard to do because you need to do it in a warm setting, and don't wear green in the video because I've done that and then it turns like invisible, and that's been a hassle. So then I just get it the way I want it to look. I crop my videos, and I like to do them like soprano, alto, tenor, bass. Yeah. Oh yeah, cool effect. Cool, yeah. And so then I just take it all and then I edit it, put it all together, make sure everything looks nice. The green screen doesn't look green in the background, and I put in like images or videos in the background, and that's about it. And then I upload it to YouTube. That has and then I download it to the desktop so I can save it in case YouTube gets hacked. And then I download it to YouTube. That's it.
Thanks, Melody. We're gonna allow David to speak for about 5 minutes about getting everything ready before you launch a project, and also what type of licenses need to be acquired so that you're completely above board. There's been a lot of questions of what about copyright? What about copyright? And David, you're one of the people I know. This is a subject dear to your heart, and you have probably one of the most honorable visions on this. So thank you. Go ahead and share that with us.
It's very nice of you to say. So for me, because I can basically do whatever I want, because it's not like a pre-existing group. The decision I make, number one, of what song to do will really make a big difference in who can participate in terms of level of difficulty, you know, what style it might be in. So that's obviously the first one. And then deciding, you know, do I want this a cappella? Do I want this with instruments? And then actually writing an arrangement. Usually what I do at that point is I record it myself. I have to use some pitch shifting. Wow, that's quite the water bottle there. I'm a nurse too, so I'm used to staying hydrated. Sorry, it's all good. So I record the parts myself. Generally, I have to record the like alto and soprano parts like a third or a fourth below, and then just kind of pitch it up for reference tracks. And for the bass, I usually drop it down, sing it a third or fourth higher, record that, and figure out if there's any kind of sections that I've written that are just like too difficult, no places to breathe, you know, things like that. And also because I do pretty much exclusively like modern pop kind of a cappella stuff, kind of like pentatonics. There's a lot of nonsense words, oohs and ahs and doos, and somebody gave me the proper word for that, but I've completely forgotten what it is. So then I need to figure out, okay, well, should that be an oo or should that be a do? Some of the things that you can't really figure out on the page. And then, yeah, I have that recorded. I make sure that all my PDFs are, free of errors, and I create the accompanying tracks like I talked about with the extra cues. It all gets uploaded to my website, make the videos that I mentioned before. I go through my extensive instructions, make sure if there's anything I want to update, anything that might be unclear. There'll never be 100% compliance. I know that for sure, even the things I think are crystal clear. And yeah, then I make announcements through social media, mailing lists, different places, and set a deadline and wait for the submissions to come in. Part of the copyright thing actually for me starts at the very beginning. Because I'm an independent operator, I don't have access to a music library of something that might belong to a university or a school. So I basically have to choose something and, license it and for distribution to my choir members, as well as, whatever form the final product will be. So I've made it, and this has been actually kind of a source of frustration in starting this latest project, is that I try to keep it as simple on myself as I can. So I generally will choose songs that I know are administered by, that are either completely public domain or administered by Capital CMG, Capital Christian Music Group, because they have a super, super easy interface on their website for licensing of distribution of sheet music, mechanical licenses for distributing guide tracks or whatnot, and as well as sync licensing if you're doing anything outside of YouTube. And anything from Capital CMG I know will be caught by YouTube's Content ID system. So I've worked with enough singers and songwriters in the past that I know how important, the songwriting royalties are to just, paying the bills, especially now during COVID, that can be like the only source of income for songwriters and the publishers that support them. So yeah, when you are approaching a virtual choir project and you don't have access to, some of the perks of institutions, like for example, you might actually have the physical music that people could come by and pick up in a safe way. That's not an option for me. Like right now, my current project is up to like 25 countries. I can't walk all the way to Singapore. So what I do is with my website, I track every single download that happens. And obviously some people may need to access the file more than once. So when it's all done, I check for unique files by unique email addresses and consider that, kind of one person. And, I compile, what the total number is, and then I purchase licenses for that. So that for my last project, that ended up being a few $100s in total. So it is, it is a bit of a hit, but thanks to some of the viral attention that, I've recouped that many times over. But for, a community choir or just another kind of non-institutional group, those costs could be a little bit more manageable because you already know how many you're going to need to begin with.
Thanks, David. And then you've also got the mechanical license and the technical license for audio and visual for YouTube, right?
So YouTube is an interesting kind of ecosystem in terms of how copyright works. Basically, the digital age and all this user-generated content on YouTube is really what has really challenged the intellectual rights industry in terms of things, because and it's enshrined, actually in the U.S. Constitution. I'm Canadian, so it doesn't really apply to me, but it's right in the Constitution that your government can create laws to like for patents and copyrights to support people being creative, being inventive, but at the same time you don't want to stifle what can happen from derivative works and whatnot. Some of the most beautiful things are derivative works that come after the fact. Covers that are more famous than the original. How many of those can we count? So for YouTube kind of has a somewhat retroactive licensing kind of thing where they've approached, all the major, record labels and publishers. They've all loaded their stuff in a database that can be recognized either manually by Disney lawyers or by artificial intelligence algorithms to recognize not only specific recordings, but it can also recognize melodies. Actually, it's an interesting challenge that all of you could try. Just record yourself singing the melody of a well-known song. Pick a Leonard Cohen song. I guarantee you will get a Content ID hit, even if you're singing it terribly. And you'll be told that this has been blocked around the world.
That and Enya found out that the hard way this week.
Yeah. So it's not that copyright rules don't apply. If you upload something that's copyrighted, and there's no way to claim fair use for an entire piece, unfortunately, on YouTube, for the most part, they could still come after you for their statutorily, guaranteed, penalties, or sue you or whatever. But there is that kind of blanket where they've decided, it's probably worth it to just let this set up here because number one, they can make money off of it. Number two, they can create more attention to the original. So a good example of this is Walk Off the Earth, who is some amazing covers, and their version of Someone That I Used to Know with all five of them, holding on to a guitar, that drew a lot more attention to the original song.
Yeah. Thanks, David. So we're going to do some closing thoughts before we go into full-out question and answers. And so I've asked everyone to prepare a pearl of wisdom that they could share that will help us choral directors go, oh, okay, great. So we're going to go Matt, Melody, then David, then I'll go. So Matt, what's your pearl of wisdom that you could tell 102 choral directors from across the world?
Wow, no pressure. So I'll defer to Eric Whitaker, and something I took from an interview he did with Choral Journal about planning for Virtual Choir 5. He said, what could it be if we made the music simple enough and hooked as many people as possible? And to me, that spoke to the power of simplicity, and especially for anyone doing a virtual choir for the first time, keep it very, very, very simple, because everyone I've talked to who's tried it for the first time has said, wow, that was way more work than I thought it would be. So keep it simple, and the rate of success will be much greater.
Thanks, Matthew. Melody, your turn.
I don't know why mine keeps muting. Okay, I'm sorry. It was muted. Okay. Wow, pearl of wisdom. So when I first started singing, I didn't think I was ever good enough to be a part of something like the virtual choirs, and I was pushed to do it. So now I'm telling you all, definitely, like, have them take the leap, like, go for it, even if you think you aren't good, because that's what I thought. And then look what happened to me. I made the solo and I was completely dumbfounded by it. So just don't, you're going to miss you're going to miss it unless you take the leap and take the chance. Just go ahead and sing and never stop singing, because right now during this time in the world, it's really hard. COVID has affected all of our lives drastically, and we just need to keep singing and, keep music alive virtually.
Thanks, Mel. David, what's your pearl?
I would say, so many pearls. The thing with the virtual choir is that there is power in numbers, and the more people you have, the poorer singers you can actually accommodate. So when you're, because we're talking to people that are maybe going to be creating virtual choirs, when your first, dozen or so participants send you their stuff, and you're like, I don't know if I can use this. That is normal. It's like experimenting on your first child when they're born, and you're like, I'm gonna mess this thing up for life. But as more and more come in, you start to realize and that all the imperfections just get woven into a tapestry. So yeah, don't fret at the beginning. You don't know what you have until the end.
Sorry, I was typing in just a reiteration of what David was saying, and you heard him right. The more people you have, the more imperfections you can have, because they kind of sink in together. And just like in a choir, if you have a choir of 200 and you've got that one kid right there, you know what I'm talking about. You can kind of help them blend. My pearl is collaborate. So we are so used, especially in ACDA, that we have great connections and relationships with composers and conductors and students. Now we have another person in this puzzle piece that we can fit in, called the sound engineer, and make friends with the sound engineer. Give them the credit they want. If you have the funding, give them the money that they deserve, and make sure that you're connecting yourself with people who can help you through this process. I have been consulting with a lot of different choir directors, and then calling up all the people on YouTube I've interviewed and saying, do you want to take a gig? All right. I know the requirements of this particular teacher. You'd be good for them. And I've been doing that with a bunch of people. Great. We're going to move into Q&A. We have 12 minutes for Q&A. It looks like feel free to throw it up now on chat or Q&A, but Q&A will get it. It's a little obvious for us that we can answer. And panel, if you have a question for each other, because this is, I think, the first time any of you have met. David and Melody, did you know that you both have performed with Julie Galke? Julie and Melody used to perform all the time together, and now Julie and David are doing a bunch of collaborations, so kind of cool.
Yeah, Julie jumped in my very first virtual choir, so that was and she brought some people with her. So
David, why don't you tell everyone about the virtual choir you're doing right now and try to get them to sing for you?
Well, the deadline is in like 5 days, so
they're choir directors. They know how to read music. It'll be fine.
Yeah. But my requirements are very stringent.
They
Actually,
are.
So one thing to mention there is that, we talked about sort of different philosophies. One of mine is what you see is what you get. So if you're on the screen, we're hearing your voice. I don't believe in muting people and whatnot. Oh, we have a question.
Yeah. I don't know if anyone here's done pay for. Have any of you mastered for anyone for pay?
No, I stayed away from that.
26. Think about what you would pay someone in a studio for their mixing time. Okay, so you've got your recording studio time, and then you've got the time that they spend mixing. One of the hard things right now is that teachers, because this was all so sudden and it shifted our whole way of life and thinking, as I was sitting here reading some of the comments on some of the boards are like, why does it cost so much? I'm like, this is their jobs. And why does this software cost much? Because someone had to create it. So yeah, in all honesty, a 26 voice, 2 to 3 minute song would cost $600, $700, $800, $1,200 in a studio. Nowadays, people are doing DIY-ish. They're doing it from their home, and you might be able to find someone who's an amateur who is amazing, might do it for $200, $300. But yeah, 26 voice. It depends on how much editing you want to. So what your goals are will also determine how much you're paying. If you want it to sound professional, and you want them to scrub the audio, and you want them to pitch correct for you, because each of those 26 voices are polyphonic, much different than it's a hymn.
Yeah, and there's also kind of the classic wisdom, like you can have good, you can have cheap, you can have fast, or those are the three dimensions. You're not gonna get good, fast, and cheap, from the same person. You kind of got to choose what it's going to be. I've had people approach me with like, "Hey, can you do this?" And the deadline's like 2 or 3 weeks away, and like, sorry.
Matt, you crowdsourced your editing, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so the way the editing looked for our ensemble is we had 12 students who were in 4 different Zoom breakout rooms, and I would cycle around the Zoom breakout rooms checking in, and they were all working on a collaborative soundtrack project, so they could all make edits in sync in real time and see each other's edits. So, it was an interesting process that I hadn't been a part of before. So, yeah, it was kind of like a little editing factory that we probably were able to work 12 times as fast because we had 12 times the amount of people working on it. Of course, they were all students learning, making mistakes, and mistakes in an editing project can actually cost much more time in the long run. So, but that was the idea, was to get everyone involved.
You can teach these skills to junior hires. I have. It's possible.
Mm-hmm.
Mel, do you want to say something?
Oh, I was just agreeing. Yes, high school, because that's when I first started. 18. I just got into it because I just felt like it, because I wanted to do it. I thought it was fun.
Mm-hmm. Your bottom lines, Dr. Stanton Usher, is the question is, what's the bottom line basic things you need for a small scale virtual ensemble? You can do it on handheld apps if you really wanted to. You can scale it all the way up to professional microphones, the same one that Avril Lavigne might use. So I don't know why I said Avril Lavigne of all people, but that's who popped in my head. Any ideas how to use virtual choirs for fundraisers? Yes, plenty, and I'm sure you do too. The answer is yes. There are plenty of ideas, and just play around with it. And you could, like David could say, give me $3 to be part of this virtual ensemble. He could do that. That's one way to do it. You can do the entry pay. You could use Patreon, which is a patron-based service. There's 100 ideas. What advice would the panelists have in helping encourage our students to take the leap to record themselves singing on their own? Mel, you...
Man, I honestly like having someone there to bug them, because that's how I did it. Like, I would never have auditioned and been able to do the things that I did if my parents didn't push me and say, you are capable of this. Just have like a little pep talk, or, it doesn't matter where you are, where you're from, as long as you have a phone. I'm using my phone right now. I think a lot of you are using your computers, which is awesome. I need to get on that. That's cool. But yeah, you're going to miss all the chances that you don't take. So,
Hey, and Cyrus, you were in that first group of students that I made do this. All I did was told you, hey, you're all doing this. I'll see you in 3 weeks. So there's that too, the idea of throwing everyone into the deep end. And there's plenty of music education research that shows how beneficial that is, because just like the workshops that I've done yesterday and today, that so many people are like, thank you for just like helping me get over the fear, because it's all about this fear. Like, I can't do this. This is not for me. This is only things that my favorite YouTubers do, and you can do this.
Yep.
Are we out of questions?
No, there was one helpful comment though about educational packages for Logic and Final Cut through Apple. Yeah, so actually especially during COVID-19, there are a number of discounts for audio video software that are available, not just for students, but especially for students and educators. So just be on the lookout. You probably find them quite easily just with the Google search.
Hmm. Has anyone done this with an older community choir? David has ages from 6 to, what was it?
I don't know. I think some of them are in their 70s.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely can be done. People in the panelists that aren't on the panel, our exec board. Do you have any questions for us? Maybe there's someone typing really slow. Who's your favorite YouTuber? You can say me. I'm my favorite YouTuber. That's fine. Okay, Melody, what's your favorite video you've published?
Oh, I really liked my Disney medley that I did. It starts out with the Lion King, and I had
Yep.
my face up like a lion.
She's an amazing makeup artist.
I just think it's fun. Like I was like, I'm just gonna make myself look like a lion because I have really big curly hair. And then I did Ariel, and then it went into Tarzan and Pocahontas, and I always wanted to do another one, but I just didn't have the time to. And it was a lot of fun and a lot of work.
What about you, David? What's the favorite one you've done? Is it the evolution video?
Yeah, I actually enjoyed. I did the evolution of Saddleback. So I was invited by Rick Warren to go out to Orange County, California, to do a medley of songs that were important to them over the last 40 years because they were founded same year I was born. And just the challenge of here is a list of 21 songs in this order, go, and trying to figure out the transitions and all that. That was interesting.
Thanks. Hey, Matt, what's your favorite YouTube video? Is it Keyboard Cat?
I really like Jacob Collier and the fascinating rhythm, all of it. I mean, his ability to play bass, keyboards, drums. I mean, it's phenomenal when you see these multi-instrumentalists and vocalists that are creating their own vocal arrangements and instrumental parts. It's just mind-blowing. And knowing that many of our students have an interest in doing that kind of thing too, and finding opportunities for them to do it.
And so I think that's a perfect way to end. That just using videos to inspire our students, saying, "Oh, I wish I could do that," and then you say, "Yes, you can." How? Let's figure it out together. And that's the cool thing about being a teacher.